This is the new Ford Capri, and let's get this out the way by saying it's nothing like the original. You probably already know, but the old Capri was a legendary petrol-powered coupe that was designed to be aspirational yet attainable. And the marketing tagline attached to it of "the car you always promised yourself" has become as iconic as the car itself. This new Capri is very different, but we're not getting clouded by nostalgia here and discussing whether it's right or wrong to bring the name back. In this review, we're talking about what this car is rather than what it isn't. And it is a fully electric coupe-styled SUV. It shares a lot in common with the Ford Explorer, but this is positioned as the more stylish and sporty option, by Ford at least. And both the Explorer and the Capri share a lot in common with other SUV rivals as well, and that's because Ford and VW are in a partnership, which means the Explorer and the Capri share a lot of things mechanically with cars like the VW ID.5 and ID.4 and the Audi Q4 e-tron and Cupra Tavascan. Now that's already a lot of cars competing against one another for sales in the electric SUV class, but there are of course many more even beyond that. So the Capri will also be up against things like the Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Tesla Model Y. So this is a very competitive class. Now Ford is using the Capri name and the marketing around this car to push this as a sporty choice in the electric SUV class. So you might be surprised to hear that the first thing we'll point out about this car is the fact that it has a massive boot, which is not a particularly sporty trait, but certainly isn't a bad thing. So you can see the load bay itself is massive and it goes back very far. It can also be very deep. And in total, we managed to fit 9 carry-on size suitcases into the boot of this car below the parcel shelf. Now, compared to an EV6 and a Tavascan, they could fit 7 suitcases in their boots. So this certainly is a very practical choice when it comes to boot space. And it's not just the sheer volume on offer which is good about this car. There are some handy things to point out too, like these hooks either side, the big storage compartments and this removable bin as well. You also get a height adjustable boot floor as standard, and in this highest position here there's hardly any loading lip at the front, and it's also split in two, which is a little bit fiddly but does mean that you can prop up this front half to give you hands-free access to the underfloor storage area, which is a very useful spot to keep your charging cable. And of course you can fold all of it down to increase the overall capacity back here. If you want even more space than this, then of course you can fold down the rear seats, but they only split fold 60-40, so in 2 chunks. Some other rivals offer 40-20-40 split folding rear seats, but you do still get a ski hatch in the Capri. Now, it is a shame that there isn't a front boot in this car, but really apart from that, you can see that this is very impressively practical when it comes to the boot. Now, the rear seats. Legroom is very generous and you've got a decent amount of space for your feet under the seat in front of you, even when it's in its lowest position. But it's headroom that's the problem in the back of the Capri, because if you are an adult sat in the back, sitting up straight, then it's more than likely that your head is going to be touching the roof lining here, because you have that coupe style design at the rear of this car. And it means that in these rear seats, because the roof line tapers away quite so much as it does, headroom really isn't that impressive. Ultimately, an EV6 and an ID.5 and quite a few other electric SUVs feel more open and spacious because they are better when it comes to headroom. It's also not great if you're sat in the middle seat in this Capri, because it's raised up quite a bit more than the outer 2 rear seats, and so obviously that makes headroom even worse. But you do have a nice flat floor. It is still though a shame that overall, for what is a pretty big SUV on the road, it's not a bit more generous than it is in these rear seats. Now, up front in the Capri, the first thing you'll probably notice here is this 14.6-inch portrait-oriented touchscreen infotainment system. And like the Explorer, it includes Ford's Sync Move feature, which means you can actually adjust the angle of the screen itself to mean you can have it bolt upright like this, or if you're finding that there's a bit of glare on the screen that's making it difficult to see, then you can slide it down in a 30-degree arc like so into this position or anywhere in between. And what it also does is mean that you've got this storage compartment here, which can be hidden when you leave the car if you want to keep things out of sight in there. As for the system itself, it's got nice graphics. It's reasonably quick to respond to your touch inputs, but it's not perfectly slick when you're swiping between different menus. It has got a fairly simple layout, and most importantly, you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. It would be better though if some of these icons were a bit bigger to make them easier to hit on the move. And the lack of physical controls means that it can be very distracting having to do simple things on this infotainment system while you're driving, like adjust the temperature or the fan speed with the climate controls. An Audi Q4 e-tron has physical controls for that and is far less distracting to use while you're driving as a result. You do have a voice command function in this car, of course, but as with pretty much every voice command system out there, it is very hit and miss as to whether it's useful or not. Now, the driving position generally in the Capri is very good because you've got a lot of adjustment in the wheel and in the seat. You've got a good view out of the front as well. The worst thing about it though are these steering wheel controls here, because they're on this really cheap, flimsy, wobbly bit of plastic, and also they're sort of touch sensitive, but you do still need to give them a prod, and it's just very unclear as to whether you have triggered them or whether you've accidentally triggered them. So that is definitely a big weakness in this interior up front. But something else that's good is the fact that you generally have a pretty bright and classy look and feel in this interior as well. It certainly looks more appealing than an ID.5 and has better build quality as well, but it's not perfect in here because you do still have some cheaper, scratchier plastics around. So ultimately an EV6 is still better when it comes to interior quality. But there is one area where very few electric SUVs can come close to the Capri inside, and that is when it comes to the amount of storage available up front here. Now, we've already pointed out this storage area beneath the infotainment system, but there's also this smartphone tray, you've got 2 cup holders, you've got decent sized door bins, you've got another tray beneath the center console, and underneath this relatively modest looking armrest, you've got an enormous cubby with these removable bits and pieces, and it is just absolutely vast, the amount of storage available up front here, which is a real strength of this interior. So this might not be the greatest electric SUV interior out there, but there is still plenty of good things up front. Now, there is a choice of 3 different batteries with the Capri, and depending on the version that you go for, you can have this car with 1 motor and rear-wheel drive, or 2 motors and 4-wheel drive. And in terms of the official range, if you go for the smallest 55 kilowatt-hour battery, then the WLTP range is 243 miles, but that goes up to 390 miles if you go for the 77 kilowatt-hour version with rear-wheel drive. This is the 79 kilowatt-hour version of the Capri, and it sits in between the other 2 models in terms of range at least, because even though the battery's a little bit bigger, you can only have it with 2 electric motors, which obviously makes it a bit heavier. So the entry-level version of the Capri doesn't have a particularly amazing range, but the 77 kilowatt-hour version and the maximum range on offer really does impress. Compared to a Tesla Model Y long-range rear-wheel drive, it is very similar in terms of what it offers. And with that version of the Capri, we actually did a real-world efficiency test in that car. And on a cold winter's day, we found that you should be able to get 293 miles from a full charge before the battery dies, which of course is a lot less than the official figure, but we also had a Kia EV6 GT line and a Cupra Tavascan V1 on the same test, and the Capri went further than both of those cars. And it also beat them when it comes to efficiency as well, averaging a pretty impressive 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. And of course, we would expect better results, both in terms of efficiency and range, in warmer conditions. When it comes to charging up the Capri, this can accept a maximum charging speed of 185 kilowatts if you go for an all-wheel drive version, but if you have a rear-wheel drive Capri, then that drops down to 135 kilowatts. But whichever version you go for, it essentially means you can get a 10 to 80% top up in ideal conditions in around 25 to 30 minutes, which just about matches what you can get in an ID.5, but a Kia EV6 can charge quicker. So the charging speeds aren't particularly amazing, but the maximum range on offer is very good, and this can also be a pretty quick car. Now, we haven't driven the entry-level version of the Capri with the smallest battery at 53 kilowatt hours, but you get 168 brake horsepower, and the official 0 to 62 mile an hour time is 8.7 seconds. And we suspect that that will offer all the power you'd probably need for a typical family SUV buyer. And it's likely that that could end up being the most recommendable version of the Capri in the lineup. But if you go for the single motor extended range version with the 77 kilowatt hour battery, then power jumps up to 282 brake horsepower. And in our testing, we did 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 5.8 seconds, which is quicker than plenty of other rivals. If that's still not quick enough for you, then you will want this all-wheel drive 79 kilowatt hour version of the Capri, which gets 335 brake horsepower, and it drops the 0 to 62 mile an hour time down to just 5.3 seconds, which is quicker than a ID.5 GTX and a whole host of other electric SUV rivals that this is up against. But is there more to the Capri than straight line pace? What is this car like on the road in other respects? Well, we've already mentioned that this is very similar mechanically to the Ford Explorer, but this is 20 millimeters lower than that car in an effort to make it the sportier option of the two. And to be honest, the impact on ride comfort is not particularly great because the suspension setup is on the firm side, and yet body control isn't particularly great. And so you're not only aware of all the bumps that are passing underneath you, but you're also thrown around the interior side to side, front to back as well. And it's particularly bad on our battered British roads. And it's also not like you put up with poor ride comfort for the sake of incredible handling, because in that department, the Capri is also a bit lackluster compared to its rivals, to be honest. The steering is very light and doesn't give you much sense of connection to what the front wheels are doing, and the car generally doesn't feel particularly willing to change direction quickly in a controlled manner. And so, yes, it is very quick in a straight line, but there's not much more to enjoy beyond that about the Capri on the road. And actually, for this range-topping model in particular, the tuning of the accelerator pedal is pretty sensitive. So if you're just pulling away from a roundabout or coming out of a junction, then a gentle brush of the accelerator can be pretty severe in the accelerator response that you're given. And then when it comes to slowing down, there's an enormous amount of travel in the brake pedal before anything actually starts happening. Now, when you're in the actual meat of the pedal, it's quite easy to judge what inputs are required to stop the car smoothly, but it's just a bit disconcerting that there is this massive amount of dead space where absolutely nothing happens. So it's not like the Capri is absolutely terrible on the road. It's just in a very competitive class where lots of other electric SUV rivals are good to drive and comfortable, and compared to them, this car is fairly disappointing. But is this car a bargain compared to the rivals that it's up against? Well, if you look at the starting price of the Capri, then the 53 kilowatt hour version in select trim will cost you less than an EV6 and Model Y, but those rivals have bigger batteries and therefore longer ranges than the entry-level version of the Capri. And if you go for the bigger battery versions of this car, then the price very quickly jumps up and it will cost you more than those rivals that it's up against. So no, it's not a bargain. In fact, we've got a range-topping version here, and with a few options fitted to it, this costs more than £60,000. At least every version of the Capri comes with lots of equipment as standard. So even if you go for the cheapest version of this car in select trim, you'll still get things like heated front seats, adaptive cruise control, and dual-zone climate control. Upgrading to premium trim adds 20-inch wheels, matrix LED headlights, an electric tailgate and a panoramic sunroof. It also gives you access to the largest 79 kilowatt hour battery and the most powerful electric motors. It does though cost a lot, as we've suggested, and disappointingly a heat pump costs extra as an option on all trim levels. Every version is covered for 3 years or 60,000 miles by Ford, which by manufacturer warranty standard is pretty average, to be honest. It matches what you'll get from VW, but a Cupra will be covered for 5 years or 90,000 miles, and everything looks terrible compared to Kia's fantastic 7-year or 100,000 mile warranty. Whether you'll need the warranty or not for the Capri remains to be seen, because of course this car is far too new to have any specific reliability data for, but what we do know is that Ford as a brand finished mid-table in our latest reliability survey. So we don't know exactly how reliable the Capri will prove to be, but what we do know is that this should be a very safe car, because crash safety experts Euro NCAP gave this the maximum 5 stars out of 5 in its crash safety testing. But just bear in mind that that very high score, while it's very impressive, should be something that most other electric SUV rivals also achieve. So the new Ford Capri can be impressively efficient. It gets lots of standard equipment and it has an enormous boot. But the truth is that in pretty much every other area, this struggles to stand out in what is a very competitive class. And for the money, there are a lot of alternatives available which are better all-rounders. Thanks very much for watching this review. If you want to see another one, then click up there and make sure you subscribe to our channel as well. And to read much more about the Capri and every other car around, click on that link to go to whatcar.com.